All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I'm Erin with the Inglewood Public Library, and today we are happy to bring you this presentation on dementia by HomeWatch caregivers. Our presenters today are Mindy Sterling and Roger Rhodes, and I will go ahead and turn it over to Mindy.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. I have the honor and privilege of working with HomeWatch caregivers of Southwest Denver for about the last 11 or 12 years, and started out as a caregiver. Also, shortly after that, got certified in dementia care in a program that our office was offering to families for folks who had a loved one who might be cognitively challenged, whether that meant on a small level or a large level. And we found a lot of amazing things out, facts and figures about this particular dilemma. And we are education oriented at HomeWatch. And the good news is that we can bring this to you and dispel a bunch of myths that we think that are out there about what dementia is and is not. Thus the subject matter, I can't find my car keys, do I have dementia? So on that note, I would love to turn it over to my boss, Mr. Roger Rhodes, the owner of HomeWatch Caregivers.
Okay, thank you, Mindy. I'll get my mask off. We go to great lengths to do COVID protection, so we've been very fortunate. We've had lots of tests and everybody's negative, and all clients and caregivers and employees have been safe. So thanks for joining us. Dementia can be a confusing and challenging condition to go through with a loved one. So we're going to give you some of our background we've developed over the last 20 years. As a preface, besides doing this professionally for 20 years, my father-in-law was a doctor and had a series of strokes, which is vascular dementia we'll talk about, and had Alzheimer's. So he lived in our home for 7.5 years. So not only we've been doing this professionally for a couple of decades, we've gone through this as many families have personally in our family. So let's get rolling. Okay, all the practice we did is not changing the slide. Erin, are you okay, there we go. Okay, as often do, we start off with a prayer. Everybody's heard the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, we subscribe to Maxine's attitude about life. She's got a different spin on this. And Maxine says, grant me the serenity to forget the people I never liked anyway, and the good fortune to run into the ones I do, and the eyesight to know the difference. So thanks, Maxine. We'll get going on our next one. Just some overall statistics of why dementia is such a big topic here in the US and around the world. Back at the turn of the century, lifespans were in their 40-year-olds, and now it's approaching 80 years old. And the 85 plus population segment is the fastest growing segment here in the US. Back in the 50s, an 80-year-old woman, only 15% would reach their 90s. And now today, an 80-year-old woman has almost a 50-50 chance of reaching another decade into the 90s. I'm a baby boomer, and the onslaught we're seeing is today, 10,000 baby boomers turn 65. Tomorrow, 10,000 baby boomers turn 65. So we're seeing this silver tsunami hit the shore where the baby boomers are aging and starting to need some care. So, but we're living longer, we're living a little healthier. 75-year-olds today are just as able-bodied as a 65-year-old was, say, 30 years ago. And this last bullet is a statistics I've seen for years, didn't use it until I saw it in a second study, that a baby born today has a 50% chance to live to 100. And I know in our practice, we've got a 102-year-old and a 104-year-old we're taking care of on a regular basis. So we're living longer, and with that, we're ending some of the dementia conditions. So let's talk about them. Big misnomer. People talk about dementia being a disease. It is not. It is a symptom of several things which we'll cover today. But dementia is a symptom, just like I have a cough. A cough is a symptom. Could it be the flu? Could it be allergies? Could it be a sore throat? Could it be something else? So dementia is the same way. If dementia is one of the symptoms we're dealing with, there's causes behind it. We're going to cover those as the brain changes on the chemistry. So there's various diseases and conditions we're going to cover. And the dementia symptom can, as many know, affect our memory, our attention span, how fast we process verbal cues and reading, and things we call ADLs, which are activities of daily living. The 6 activities of daily living we help people with and that dementia can affect is getting up out of a chair, walking, simply showering and dressing and toileting and eating. Dementia can affect all those, and we'll talk about that in a bit here. Let me get back. So memory loss, lots of reasons. Some are reversible, and we're going to give you good news about some of the dementia symptoms that are reversible. And there's some things we can do not to cure, but to push off or prevent some of these measures to reserve some of our cognitive abilities. So some symptoms, there's quite a few here. If you've had loved ones or a friend or family member, it may be not uncommon for them to ask you the same question 30 minutes later. Having trouble with words, forgetting names, forgetting places, forgetting simple things, calling everything a whatchamacallit. Being in areas they've been before, very familiar, and not really focusing and being lost in that familiar area. Processing, simple directions. When we had Dad living with us, we wouldn't give him an open-end question. We wouldn't give him several multiple choice. It said, do you want the blue shirt or the red shirt? Real simple directions because they can't process everything like they normally could. Time and place disorientation. I see another one coming in here, and if you can admit, that would be great. Being disorientated for time and place. We had an early Pathways to Memory client, which Mindy mentioned earlier, the process, named Claire, and her time and place orientation was off. Claire would think every day was Tuesday, that it was 1980 and Ronald Reagan was the president. And I remember being in her apartment and having the snow come down. I said, what season are we in? And she said, oh, it's spring, beautiful. So as you'll see, we didn't correct, but her time and place orientation. And she thought she lived in the city of Pennsylvania in the city of Florida. There was some connection. She was born and raised in Pennsylvania. She moved to Denver from Florida. But even though she was disoriented on time and place and people, she could add up a column of numbers faster than I could. She could beat our caregivers in Scrabble. So the dementia didn't affect every part of her brain. People have been very socially active and engaged, sometimes lose interest. They lose initiative, even on things that they like to do in the past. There's some paranoia with dementia, some confusion, and naturally, if we can't remember things and remember people and remember words, there's anger involved. And that's all part of the national emotions that somebody goes through with dementia. Making poor judgments. Where we've gone in and they haven't paid their water bill, they haven't paid electrical bill, the things are getting dropped that they used to take care of. Also, personal hygiene. We'll go in on Monday, come back on Wednesday, and Sarah's still wearing the same pink jumpsuit she had on the day before. So they also usually exhibit poor nutrition where they just don't have the processing skills to put together meals on their own. So let's talk about some of these dementias. There's reversible dementias, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Vascular dementia is another word for a stroke. Off on the right side, frontal temporal dementia is a dementia that affects the frontal lobe of the brain, And with that comes, it's a pretty rapidly progressing disease, and it greatly affects their personality. We've had folks with that. Lewy bodies is another one. It's often confused with Alzheimer's, but the bottom one here at the bottom is Alzheimer's disease. It's the most common disease, as you see in this next slide. The number one is Alzheimer's disease. Strokes we mentioned, Lewy bodies we mentioned, Parkinson's. We specialize dementia care, but we have also over time specialized in movement disorders like Parkinson's. And a high percentage of, I think this slide says 20%, but it's growing. I've heard 40% in a recent study, that along with the Parkinson's, besides the tremors and the muscle rigidity, there's often some cognitive loss with dementia. Some other types of dementia. I mentioned FTD, normal pressure hydrocephalus. This is extra fluid on the brain. My father-in-law also had that. CJ disease is a very rapidly progressing hereditary disease. May have joked back when we were younger that we're out in college and drinking at night and we're killing some brain cells, but guess what? We were. We had our Pathways to Memory program in Dublin, Ireland for quite a while. And honest to goodness, the cliche, there was a lot of alcoholic dementia, and we would help them kind of regain some of their cognitive losses. And TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, due to trauma, due to a car accident. We've had those clients over the way. All of these conditions, all these diseases can create dementia symptoms. Let's go back to Alzheimer's. It's the number one. The common knowledge now on dementia through Alzheimer's are plaques and tangles. In our brains are neurons, and these neurons have dendrites or fingers, as you see in this drawing. And the end of those fingers or dendrites get gunked up with plaque, or they become tangled. If you see this photograph, this is an electron microscope picture of a dendrite, or instead of having the plaque, which is a mucus-type gunk causing interruptions in our thought process, this is a tangle that was captured by electron microscope, where the signals aren't getting through the brain because the dendrites have been curled up and are tangled. Okay, some good news. I think I've got all these up. All right. Many of these conditions that we talked about are reversible. And we see day to day of people with dementia symptoms, and some of these reversible conditions are, they've got a high fever. Dehydration is huge. We have so many folks get dehydrated, they go to the ER. It looks like dementia, there's total confusion, and it's just dehydrated. They get an IV, get rehydrated, and they're right as rain after that. Thank goodness it's reversible. Medications. Sometimes people have reactions to medications. Sometimes what we see is somebody has a fall, they go to the ER, they go to the hospital, they go to a rehab center and come home. And in that cycle, they've gained some medications, and maybe they're interacting with each other and causing problems. Or many times we find they're not taking their medications properly, and that can cause confusion and dementia type symptoms. Thyroid glands are very, very tiny tissue, but they're awfully powerful. When that is off, your T levels are off, the dementia symptoms can happen, but that can be reversed. We mentioned earlier TBI, a minor head injury. Somebody who's had a fall will get extra fluid in the brain, and that can cause dementia symptoms. And then besides the medications, this vitamin deficiency. And on top of that, poor nutrition. It's not uncommon if an elderly person is living home alone, they want to make a big deal and cook for one person, and we see them eating cold cereal twice a day. And that's their whole diet, which is poor nutrition, and that can cause dementia symptoms. Okay, communication. As
I got this one.
You got this one.
Yeah.
Go for it. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. And I see we got some friends that might be taking notes. And if you are, just want to remind you that you can get in touch with us. We'll give you an email at the end where you can have this entire PowerPoint printed out, and we can send that to you or somehow get it to you. So this is a lot of information, number one. Number two, having worked for Roger as long as I have, I started out as a caregiver, as I mentioned before. And one of the things that I was taught as far as working with those who might have some cognitive issues was some very powerful things that I saw personally turned a lot of situations that could have been frustrating for someone around. My father died of frontal lobe dementia. And one of the things that was very powerful that I learned is to not correct people. If they can't remember something, or what's the word they're looking for, or they see a picture of someone that I think they should recognize on the wall. Oh, you remember that's Aunt Sophie, Mom. Say, oh, you remember, oh, you remember, oh, you know this, did you forget that? Those are things that are, I'll put them in the shaming category. They don't feel that way to us. But most of the time I found that people that have cognitive challenges know that they do. And to draw attention to it does not do any good. Validation of their feelings, what their fears are. If you can get them to be able to talk about something like that. I don't want to do this because I don't know how. Or sometimes, especially around the holidays, someone might not want to get together with a group of people because they know if they're at the dinner table with the kids and the nephews and the nieces and the family, and someone fields a question at them and they're not able to react or answer, then they're embarrassed. So there's many things to be sensitive in that area and to validate that, yes, that would be uncomfortable. Sometimes when I would work with someone who was doing something that I didn't want them to do. They were going to walk outside without a coat on, or they were going to do something that was getting them. You could see the image of a cartoon image of a cartoon character up against a wall, just kind of spinning their wheels, you know, just trying to get somewhere but not getting anywhere. Sometimes it's good to just redirect them. Roger has some wonderful examples of that. If I'm working with someone and they're remembering something that hurts their feelings, then I can bring up something about their daughter. They say, well, my daughter doesn't like me very much because I don't remember, she doesn't think I'm as sharp as I used to be. And then I'll say, oh, well, tell me something about your daughter. Did you ever go on trips together? Or what did you do when she was a little girl? Did she have a hobby? Therefore, I'm redirecting that person to a different subject matter, and it gets them away from whatever cycle they're in. Sense of humor, too, is really, really important, to make fun of certain things or kid about certain things. And therapeutic fibbing is something that we've learned in our company that might sound like, hey, what do you mean? But one of the things that one of the greater stories that I'll borrow from Roger is that there's a couple who are lying in bed and they're in their 80s, and the wife sits up and goes, oh my gosh, I gotta get up and get the kids ready for school. And this would happen on a regular basis during the season where the kids used to go to school a lot. And so the wife will sit up and go, I know, I gotta get their lunches. And the poor hubby turned to us, who were the caregiving company at the time, and said, you know, I'm not getting any sleep, and she's stressed, and this is just wrecking our lives. And what we talked to them about was therapeutic fibbing, and for him to be able to say, oh no, it's okay, Sylvia, tomorrow's a school holiday. And she'd go back to sleep and say, oh, okay. Or he could say, you know, I took care of that last night. Of course, she could get up and make sure that he did the right thing, as wives and husbands might be able to do. But there's different settings where we find that that's okay, because the belief in their mind is not within realistically what's going on anyway. They lose time and space and go back. My mother did that thing right in front of me, and she had, I would say on occasion, alcoholic dementia, and looked at me one night and said, oh, we need to turn the light on for your sister. And I said, why? And she goes, well, the wedding's tomorrow. Well, my sister had been married for 25 years. And I looked back at her and I said, okay, well, why don't I go turn on the light instead of arguing with her? And my father got very mad at me. He didn't understand. We don't lie in my family. And he was like, why are you doing that? I did explain it to him later. With every situation, whether it's your neighbors or your friends or your spouse, keeping it slow, steady, and simple. your actions, your words, your intentions, whatever directions, whatever you're doing, do it keeping it slow and reassuring, reassuring, reassuring. It's such a positive vitamin in every situation to do that. Praising people, saying, oh, yeah, wow, that was good. Not in a condescending or patronizing way. And there's a fine line between that I learned as a caregiver. But praise, genuine praise, and thinking of it often. We do that with our children. We do that when we're little. It works when, you know, if they say the terrible twos, well, it works with the 82s too, the 92s, if you have cognitive situations involved. And remain calm when your buttons are pushed. It's common when we're working with our parents, especially adult children that are getting a caregiving company involved or not, to try and not let those. My parents knew where my buttons were because they installed them, if you will. And so I had to really locate them and go, okay, this is not fair game. I'm here to be the best daughter I can be. And back to you, Roger.
Yeah, one quick comment about therapeutic fibbing. It's a Mayo Clinic technique that we've learned. So it's legit, it's moral, it's legal.
Oh, therapeutic fibbing?
Fibbing, yeah, it's just another type of redirection.
All righty.
Yeah. Okay. If we can get this going again. Do you want to take this one too, Mindy?
Sure.
Want me to take it? I'll take off on it.
Why don't you take it since you wrote it?
Yeah, we just have to remember that people with dementia and their coping skills, they wake up with high anxiety already over their head the first thing in the morning. They're starting to think that I'm forgetting things, I can't find the right words, people are correcting me all the time. And in the Alzheimer's journey, there's a famous book that goes back called, you know, The Long Goodbye. It's goodbye remembering my spouse, goodbye being able to drive, goodbye with being able to pay bills, goodbye with, it turns into a loss of self. And that's why when we take care of folks with dementia, we try to give them little bitty successes each day. And Mindy was great at this with a lady named Jackie. And she would say, well, you think I'm stupid, because her daughter would come over on Saturday morning and Jackie wasn't ready for the doctor appointment. She'd forgotten. And Mindy would build up her confidence by, you know, praising her and reassuring her that she's got this. So we just have to remember, this is not the person, this is the disease process. So they deserve the dignity and respect and self-esteem that they had before all this started happening to them. And an adage we've heard for years is that communication, most of the communication is nonverbal. So we, even in the face of somebody who's chronically asking the same questions over and over, we want to have our three smiles: smile on her face, smile in her eyes, but even more telling, smile in her voice, that they know that they've asked the same question 30 minutes ago and we smile like we've never heard it before, and we answer them. And there are no wrong answers, like we had with Claire. We never told her it wasn't Tuesday, it wasn't 1980. That was her reality, and we need to live in these people's realities and try to avoid the negative statements. And another thing, try to avoid talking around them. I've been evaluating people in their homes with dementia, and the daughter or the son will be there, and they're talking to me and they're talking around their parent as if they don't exist. And I go right back to the dementia folks and I look them in the eye and I ask them all the questions. And sometimes the adult kid will interrupt and answer for them, and I give them a dirty look in my eyes saying, you know, I'm talking to your mom, let her answer. And if you give them some time, they can process and usually come back with an answer. So environmentally, there's a thing called Think Peace. It's an acronym. When we have people who aren't focused or have disruptive behaviors, there's this checklist called Think Peace that we can go through, you can go through, to help them get through. Mindy's going to cover that in a couple more slides, but let me go. You can read this list. It's our dementia communication checklist. We don't want to argue with them. We want to agree with them. We don't want to reason with them. We want to redirect them or divert them. And Mindy mentioned that we don't want to go into the shame and lecturing. There's key words we don't want to go with, and that's "don't you remember," or "I already told you," or "you can't do that." Those are condescending things, and we want to stay away from that. list on the left and try to stay on the other side where we help them reminisce on things they can remember. We have a social profile in our dementia folks, and they won't remember if they had breakfast 5 minutes ago, but they'll remember 1945 like it was yesterday. And those are good memories, and we want to go there so they can feel good about themselves and feel competent that they are remembering some things. Okay, let me go through some quick case studies. We've screened these folks, or they've been screened by a neurologist or a doctor. We've also done things like mini mental status exam, MMSEs. There's all types of Alzheimer's scales and tests, which you maybe have seen, where you'll draw a face of a clock and what day is it, all those things. Let me go through some case studies of how we help some people with dementia. We had a male client, not cooperative, wouldn't take his meds, wouldn't get dressed, wouldn't shower, wouldn't eat very much. And we found out through our social profile that he was a big bird watcher. And so we brought in that Audubon bird watching book that had the color photos. We went to Hobby Lobby and got a really primitive birdhouse kit. And we helped him make a birdhouse. And then we put that outside his window so he could see it. And then with his daughter's permission, got him a little parakeet with a cage. And he wouldn't get out of bed and do anything. But when he had that bird, he would get up and feed the bird and make sure the bird had water and talk to it. And that brought him out of his stupor, where he did a complete turnaround and was starting to comply and taking his meds and hydrating and dressing and letting us getting cleaned up each day. There's a female we had who was from rural Kansas, and we tried to help her follow on her physical therapy exercises when the PT person wasn't there. She had no interest in that. And we learned about her growing up in a small rural town in Kansas. We got a caregiver and got a tablet, and we loaded up Google Earth, and we could zoom in on a little town in Kansas where she lived and go, as you know, with how great Google is these days, go house by house and street by street. And she could remember that Susie, her best friend, lived on this block, and there was her elementary school and her high school. And that kind of got her going, where she could reminisce about things she could remember, which were back in the day. A lot of times with dementia, the short-term memory goes first, and some of the long-term memories are still there. This case 3 was a gentleman who was pretty advanced dementia. He wouldn't let us come in and take care of him. He wouldn't do his PT exercises, and we learned that he was a farmer. And so we brought in the tablet and pulled up images of tractors that a farm-all tractor and all the different tractors he had when he was a kid and when he was a professional farmer. And we went through that. He thought our caregiver and sometimes me were his grandson. And I went along with it and said, yeah, Dad, you're right. You know, the therapeutic fibbing from Mayo Clinic. And over that time, when we were bringing him good, positive memories and little successes each day, those barriers dropped down, and he started engaging and you know, getting dressed, taking his meds, and eating better. I don't know why 3 of the 4 examples are males, but for this study, we had 4 males. And with a lot of our folks, whether it's just age or whether it's dementia, there's what we call resistance to assistance. And I don't need really help. I don't want anybody in here. And this fellow name was Harry, and his daughter sent me a check every now and again for $50, and we'd go and get Santiago breakfast burritos and red licorice from Costco. And we'd go to the door, and he wouldn't let us in. We say, Harry, I got burritos and licorice. He said, oh, come on in, and put your coat on the door, Harry, you can stay. And we learned more and more about it. He and his son were nationally ranked tennis doubles champions. And so we talked about tennis. And to get him to do some of his physical therapy, we got him to take a tennis stance of how he would accept a serve and how he would serve, and got him moving again because his legs were starting to atrophy. So knowing that about him and doing those good memories about his tennis acumen and feeding him with the licorice and the burritos built some trust. It motivated him. And this last thing is one of the things we had to get him to, he had kind of Parkinsonian dementia and Parkinsonian symptoms. He would shuffle his feet. We'd say, Harry, you imagine right in front of you is a plate of your favorite food. What is it? Ice cream. Don't want to step on the ice cream. So we get him to step up and over the plate and get him to take larger steps so he wasn't shuffling, which is always a fall risk. So we don't want to force these people into our reality. It's their reality. It's their life. So there's no drawbacks in doing that. And we can really advance their quality of life and give some respite to their families at the same time. So here's that acronym of people who have stagnated frustrations, disruptive behaviors. These are some tools you can use to get them going forward. If you'd like to take these next 3 slides, Mindy.
Love to. One of the things that's important to remember, and thus the reason for the acronym, if you're with somebody who's fidgety or acting out or uncomfortable or just uncalm in general, there's many things that might attribute to that are solvable, and needing to go to the bathroom. Sometimes as folks age, the signals from the brain to the bladder and other such situations are slower and sometimes non-existent depending on their physical condition. So asking them if they need to go, it can solve some discontent at times. Along the same lines, if they're too hungry or thirsty or haven't eaten recently. There's that fine line between asking somebody, when did you last eat, or do you go to the bathroom? We have to kind of face this stuff and not act like we're minding their business. But at the same point, get that information, because they might just be hungry. They just might need to get that blood sugar up, and they're cranky or they're tired or they're unreasonable. Incontinence can be a big one. With pain or embarrassment, they may not want to say that they're full, if you will, or it's shifting and it's not comfortable, or there's all kinds of things involved with that that can cause discomfort. Next slide would be great.
There we go.
Even myself, at this point in my life, I've always been sonically affected. I've always had a certain irritation if I'm talking to somebody in a restaurant and they've got the sound system on and there's some rock and roll happening. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind rock and roll. I just don't want it in my ears when I'm trying to talk to somebody. That sometimes is very true. Is there too much going on in a room? I think as the brain is more selective and the brain gets more overwhelmed, it also needs to parcel out what it's listening to and have as little distraction as possible, as well as some people are wearing hearing aids. And they may not be able to hear through that commotion, even if it's an assisted living facility where there's other people and there's caregivers around. So it's best to ask about the noise level. Gee, mom, gee, dad, gee, friend, let's go into a quieter room. Is there a topic they enjoy talking about? Their past, as Roger was bringing up. Things that, when you're talking about therapeutic fibbing, I remember going to visit my mom and saying, she used to be a professional actress my whole life. And I thought, ooh, tell her that you're going to be in a production coming up and you want her advice on a certain part that you're going to play. Because I knew that she knew this really, really well. At other times, I asked her about certain recipes that I knew were her, hollandaise sauce was my mom's thing. And do I make it? No. But I went to her and asked her. So empowering people with things that they know. Also, I can't stress this enough, being a professional musician and doing a lot of work in memory units. Finding the right music for somebody is so powerful. So if you get the chance, even for yourself, it makes all of us happy in our car and whatever our station is. But for everybody, especially elderly folks, when you find that swing tune or you find that song they got married to, ask the right questions. Ask them about that music. Please write this down if you get a chance. There is on YouTube, there is something called Alive Inside. And it is a gorgeous movie about this subject matter. And if you can watch the whole thing, great. If not, if you bring it up on your computer and you see what is called Henry's Story, It's a little thumbnail. It's only 7 minutes long. Get that up and you'll be so happy. Alive Inside, Henry's story, you should be able to find on the internet. The power of music to unlock and empower people. Pain, sometimes we don't know. The famous things are that people's shoes are the wrong shoes, or they're too tight, or they're in pain because at home they didn't take their medication yet. Sometimes they don't take medication with food the way they should, so they've got an upset tummy. So being a little bit of a detective and finding out if they've taken their medications and how that is, and their environment. I don't think this is exclusive to the elderly, although we notice it more when we're young and we go visit mom and it's 120 degrees in her room and we're like, oh my gosh, how do you do this? You know, everybody has preferences about how cold or hot, even in my home, would we like the door open or not, or who wants to sleep with the window open or not? Same thing. Is it too dark? Is it too bright? My mother liked blackout curtains, you know, in her bedroom when she was elderly. Too messy, feelings of being overwhelmed by the environment. And the environment that sometimes they can't control because their minds can't wrap around cleaning all of that up. And that's not a crime. If you walk into someone's dwelling who has dementia of any sort, and it's just a mess, it's again going, oh gosh, you know, why don't you clean this up? Shaming statement. Number 2, probably because it's just too overwhelming. Activity. There's an Eden philosophy. We're certified in that, and you're welcome to look up what that means. But it's basically about there's things that really, if you will, are plagues of aging, and boredom is one of them. What are the other 2, Roger?
The 3 plagues of aging we try to mitigate are loneliness, helplessness, and boredom.
Right. So with
there's
loneliness,
anecdotes for each of those.
Great. Pardon?
And there's anecdotes for each of those.
The activity, not being bored. Again, feeling like you have a purpose. People need to be engaged. They need the mental stimulation. That's what I'd kind of certified work that I did as far as keeping their minds active, keeping the different parts of their brain active. Loneliness, that's why we come by, and that's why we don't want their social lives to go away. On this list, which I'll stick to, I brought this up before, it was a room too crowded. There's their anxiety with that, or multiple people around. Being exhausted. People with cognitive issues get very stressed out by processing, coping with normal to day-to-day issues that are just fine with us, that our brain handles without even thinking, and half the times we don't even know it. They simply need to lie down and rest, which is what we call sundowners syndrome at a certain time of day. That happens when a lot of people just run out of steam. And I don't know if there's a third.
That is it.
Okay, back to you, Chet.
Just some more statistics. The famous AARP MetLife study, the largest study of elderly people ever done, and a lot of takeaways. It's several pages long, but one of them is that 95% of us do not want to go to a facility, that we want to stay home. It reminds me of the little tape in the back of my mind from my grandmother saying, I don't care what happens, somebody shoot me, don't put me in a nursing home. This is decades ago. They're good nursing homes now, but back in the day, it was a real stigma, and we did keep her at home. So another statistics, about half of the people that are already made that move to assisted living could have stayed home with just a little bit basic extra care, could be back home with a little assistance. And the last one is just, it is a little bit more cost effective to keep people at home rather than putting in a facility. And with this recent COVID issue, we've had a couple of daughters who have gone and basically kidnapped their parents and brought them home to their house because they just didn't want them to be exposed with the other folks there. Having lived with somebody with dementia for 7.5 years in my house, I know respite is needed. You can get that from friends and family or church friends or paid professionals, but you need to get out and you need to get away and charge your batteries, because there can be resentment and anger of why me and why I'm taking care of this person who's pushing my buttons. Here in the Denver area, we're blessed with support groups through the Alzheimer's Association. Even the Parkinson's Association addresses dementia. When we're in the middle of this chronic progressive disease, we think we're the Lone Ranger and I'm all this all by myself, but please go to a support group. They're easy to find through the disease organizations like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. And you'll be able to help somebody. You're going to be ahead of the curve from somebody who's just starting the journey. And I guarantee there's somebody down the road ahead of you who can give you some insights of what's ahead around the next curve. Adult daycares can be good places to get some respite, to get some help that you need. We tried that with Dad, and he was still pretty with it. And we took him to an adult daycare, and he came back and said, "Hey, Dad, how'd you like that?" He says, "I'm not going back to that damn place." So what? I said, "Well, there's a bunch of old people there." I said, "Dad, you're 83. You're old also." But what they did, they parked him in front of a big screen TV, and there were people on both sides of him slumped over in their wheelchairs, and that freaked him out. He didn't want to be considered in that category. So adult daycare didn't work for us, but it works for many, many people. So we advise that too. Caregiver support. There's some Veterans Administration programs. If you want more information, we can get your email, or there's a phone number at the end of this. There's a thing called Aid in Attendance Pension, which is very helpful for both veterans and surviving spouses. So that's something that can help give you some funds to get some respite care that you need. And some options on getting that respite care. There's a website called lotsofhelpinghands.com. It's friends and family who can go onto this website. Not related to Alzheimer's, but we had a gentleman whose wife had MS, and he would go on to lotsofhelpinghands.com about the third week of the month and say, "Next month I need help on Tuesdays with showers and Thursdays on grocery shopping." And within about 10 days, friends and family and coworkers would go on and say, I'll take her to this doctor appointment and I'll run get groceries this day. And it was a great resource for him. So we recommend it to others too. To get respite care, you can use freelancers or independent contractors. This WSJ is Wall Street Journal. There's an article about if you do that, be careful, and these are the steps you need to take on taxes, and make sure you got a rider on your homeowner home insurance in case there's a slip and fall by an independent contractor. There's home care agencies like ours that are non-medical. There's home health agencies that are medical that can provide speech therapy, which sometimes gets affected by dementia, physical therapy, occupational therapy. So all those resources are available for you. To answer the question, the first slide is, I can't find my car keys. Do I have dementia? The answer is probably not. If you go, how many times have you gone into a room to get something, you get there and you say, what was I here for? If you remember where the car keys are later, if you remember why you went into that room later, that's not dementia. If you have car keys and you don't know what they're for, that's dementia. Dad would look at the phone and the TV remote and get them mixed up and get angry on why he couldn't call his son on his TV remote, or get angry why he couldn't change the channel with the phone. So if you can't find your car keys, you find them later. You don't have dementia, so not to worry. There are tests you can take, and we can guide you some of those. But this last thought I wanted to drive home is the people with dementia may not remember your name, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. So as Mindy and I have gone through slide by slide, are we correcting them? Are we praising them? Those are things we want to keep in mind, that we don't want to correct. We don't want to reason with them. We don't want to argue. We do want to reassure them, and we do want to praise them. And there's lots of tools, in addition to the ones we've talked about today, that we can also help you with if you're struggling with this disease journey of dementia. Okay, Aaron, do we have any questions or anybody on the chat line that we could expand upon?
I don't see any questions in the chat box. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
Okay. Do you have any questions, Aaron? I don't know if you've ever come across with dementia folks in your life.
I'm wondering, do you have, just sort of generally, do you have any suggestions for how to maybe help people out during this pandemic? Like I think a lot of people, you can't have as much contact if you know somebody in assisted living or in a nursing home. And do you have any suggestions for how to deal with that?
You know, what we've seen is because we're essential workers, we're allowed into facilities, and we just in the last 6 weeks got called by families saying, Dad's in the facility, I can't go see him. He's pretty darn healthy and independent, but he's really depressed. And it's triggered some of his dementia where the son is getting scared that something's progressing in this. And so we've gone in and, the fellow's staying clean and showering and dressing. He's just depressed, and we've got the social profile in front of us. We're engaging him on things he likes to reminisce with. The son brought a tablet with all the family photos on it, and we're going through that. And he's like a new person because of that engagement. Mindy, being a professional singer, has put together, do we have 2 or 3, Mindy, songs that are real popular or familiar with the older folks, and we've been able to send into some of our shut-ins, some of the folks.
Yes, we did 3 of them.
Yeah.
And You Are My Sunshine, or just some things that were more uplifting. Good question. Lindsay, do you have any questions for us? Anything that's on your mind that you want to? Nope.
Anything to share? Like a support group? That's a good question, Aaron. It's just engaging them and keeping them away from that loneliness and helplessness and boredom that they're exhibiting because of COVID-19.
And if you need a copy of this, definitely give a call to the number on the screen, which is that 720-344-4700. If you'd like a print out of this, and we can send it to you, or maybe if you have digital capabilities in a printer, great. It's a lot of ink, but let us know, because this is a lot, and you might get further down the line. I know that I have, and remembered something that was said and go, oh, I need that right now. And I can't remember what he said. And to watch this whole thing again would be good, but we can kind of make that simpler if you like. And please let us be of assistance in any situation. We love to be a reference. We would like to be people's caregivers, sure. But more importantly, we're in the education business because we really, really want to be, I know, standing at that crossroads when my father, they told me he had dementia, and I didn't know what that meant. And then we moved my mother out here to Colorado. I was like frozen in place, like, oh, wow. I needed to know a lot of these things, and many of a couple of the things that I did and decisions I made were under duress because I didn't have the information. So we are glad. Give us a call under any circumstance to the office and say, gosh, I'm in this dilemma. Who would you steer me towards? We've got to downsize the house. We don't know people that do that. Whatever it is, we'd love, love, love to be there for you.
Thank you, Mindy. Aaron, could you maybe, I know this is being recorded, tell those that may be listening how they can access this on your YouTube channel, as well as our first presentation a couple months ago was family caregiver burnout. The second one was another talk about dementia communication. Aaron, how do people access this after today?
Well, thank you so much for being here today. Again, another great presentation. And the first 2, as you mentioned, are on the Inglewood Public Library of Colorado YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and search Inglewood Public Library Colorado, you'll find their previous presentations there.
Okay, terrific.
Is there a particular link on that? I've been to that site. Is there a particular link you have a menu across the top that has many options. What option would they choose?
You know what? I'm not sure, but if there is not a link on our website, I think that it's a good idea, and we'll get it put up there.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Erin, for having us, and I hope we can be a resource for some folks as time goes on and the need is there.
Thank you so much for being here.
All right.
Thank you, Erin.
All right. Take care. Be well.